about.
Thank you, Group Captain. It seems like a Vande Bharat just went by, right? That's the energy that Group Captain brings to the table. Thank you so much. I just want to make a correction. Please sit back, do not relax. This topic is such. We want you to pay attention. We want you to grab the insights. And I wish I had read this book 30 years ago. Having said that, Read and Grow over the last 3 years among Sangeeta, Sumesh, Ram Prasad and myself, we have been the 3 people who have been doing this month on month. Every once in 3 months we get. And thanks to MMA and my co-colleagues, I have had the opportunity to dwell in. You always need a reason to dwell in more in detail. And so I take that as an opportunity to go deeper. Now coming back, the term grit in some form captured my imagination about 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, I got a WhatsApp forward of a YouTube interview in which somebody was asking Rahul Dravid, our cricketer, who was the most admired person in his mind? Who did he admire the most? And he gave a surprising story. He mentioned the name of a person called Praveen Tambe. I don't know whether how many of you heard the name of Praveen Tambe. Praveen Tambe is a cricketer with no exceptional cricket background, cricket qualities. He was not a greatly talented cricketer in whatever form. And because of the social background from which he came into the cricket arena very, very late. At a time when most established cricketers are thinking of retiring is when Praveen Tambe was kind of getting into the cricketing scene. So well past his 30 years is when he came into any form of prominence, right? And Rahul Dravid said, Praveen Tambe couldn't kind of help it that he didn't have the talent that Sachin Tendulkar had. But that did not stop him from doing what he did. So he said, every morning when the Mumbai Indians cricketing team used to kind of practice in the stadium, he says Praveen Tambe will be the first guy who will stand outside the gate. And he says every single day he will wait from that early morning right up to the point, the regular nets that happen, the frontline bowlers will tire after some time. They can't keep bowling all the time. Once the frontline bowlers tire, then the coach is looking at who else can bowl. If anybody can bowl, he'll kind of give them the opportunity. And that's how he says Praveen Tambe got an opportunity to bowl in the Mumbai Indians. Sheerly out of the fact that there was no other bowler, everybody had got tired. And that's when he got his opportunity after many, many months of doing this. To cut a long story short, he said, after many years of just carrying cool drinks for the Mumbai Indian teams, finally he got a break closer to his 40 years of age, right, at T20. And he says the sheer perseverance of Praveen Tambe is what kind of astonishes me. Because if I had even an iota of that perseverance, I would have scored that much more runs. And that coming from a player like Rahul Dravid was something fantastic. So the word that he kind of talked about was perseverance, and it since grabbed my attention. And then I happened to chance upon this TED talk by Angela Duckworth. The author of this book is a person who is an academic, and she has done a variety of roles as a consultant academic. She's a psychologist of sorts. So she has also been grappling with the same format. Is talent the only indicator of success, or is there something more to it? Because we often, especially since there are students here, I want to tell, often in school, you'll find that, there are ranking systems. And in a class of 40, you'll have 1 to 40 ranks. And after you see that you're not in the first 5, you almost give up, right? I mean, I don't know where I'm heading. But really that's not true as per what the book says. Angela Duckworth says to succeed, it's not just talent, but it's a whole lot of things that follows. And the more I read this book, the more it resonated with the thought processes and ideas, which I think are very, very relevant for all of us to follow. So I'm going to kind of pause here because I have two distinguished panelists who are dear friends of mine, and I'm going to move over to Kumar. And this book has been divided into three large formats. So the first format is, what is grit and why does it matter? And I want Kumar to throw light on this part of the...
Thank you, Babu. So as per Angela, the way she defines grit is slightly different from the traditional definitions of passion, compassion, interest, talent. The way she defines grit is a combination of both passion and perseverance. So she even uses a scorecard called Grit Scorecard, and she uses a questionnaire about from 10 questions for passion and 10 questions for perseverance. Say, for example, for perseverance, if you keep changing your interest every 6 months, okay, today I want to reduce my weight, so I pursue weight reduction diet for 6 months. Then tomorrow I want to build my muscles, so I go to the gym. So what do? So I keep changing my interest, and or I do one business as an entrepreneur for 1 year, and I just shut down and go and do another business. So like questionnaires like this, you keep changing your interest often, and you're not pursuing a given interest for a longer period. She defines that longer period as 10 years. That's her definition, right? That's, so if you need to have sustained perseverance for approximately 10 years. So that's the scale of perseverance. And she defines passion as something which is not interest. It is not something you like. Okay. So a passion is for a higher purpose, higher value, and it's going to get you somewhere. Okay, so that's the definition of our passion. There are many definitions. She quotes many psychologists like David Cunningham and many other guys who are Aristotle, 150 years before how Aristotle defined passion as, versus current psychologists, how they define passion as. So the grit scale is made up of two parts. One definition is passion, another definition is perseverance, and scale of 0 to 5 in both aspects. So in that I measured myself. I put myself and say, what is my grit score? So I had probably the credibility to say I spent 23 years in corporate world working for HP and IBM, and I ran sales organization. So it is a key element of grit. So running a sales organization needs a different skill, right? And last 12 years or so, I am being an entrepreneur. I've tried to invest in 12 business units, and I tried to exit. So we'll talk about exit in a while. So when do we quit? So grit is not about just staying and following your passion for 10 years. You should know when to quit as well. So that's the key element of grit. So that is, I have some credibility to talk about it. So I measured myself in this. I was around 4.2 in a scale of 5. And she defines anyone above the score of 3.5 as gritty. Okay? So that is a definition of grit. Right? So that's just a prelude to what is grit. Grit is made up of passion and perseverance. It is not interest. It is not talent. Okay? It is not what you like. So grit is in probably in equivalent Sanskrit word. If you want to find that, Vairagya might be the closest word which comes to grit. It is not the willpower. Some people think grit is willpower. Well, it's not willpower. So the closest word which comes to grit, I would equate that as Vairagya. Right? That's the definition of grit.
Super. Karthik, You've been sitting silent, so I want to...
No, I've been listening very intently.
So let me ask you the question.
Yes, sir, please.
So, reading at this book, one gets a feeling that talent is somehow not so essential. Right? I mean, it's kind of given a second seat in some sorts. And perseverance and passion and so on and so forth seems to be the heroes of this book. So, what in your mind, through your journey of life, is grit in relation to this book? And how do you think it matters for success?
Absolutely. Good evening. Pleasure to be here. I do read a lot, but unfortunately, I came across this book quite late. I wish I had come across this book earlier. I started my career as a mechanical engineer, did the job for quite a number of years before I moved into human resources. And one important thing, when I read the books, I just don't flip them through. I sit, read, underline. If I don't understand, I go back and read again, right? Possibly, I would have read this book already twice, I still didn't understand. The point is, the more you learn, the more you don't understand. So in this book, it talks about talent also. Being in this profession of human resources, one important myth that got broken is blinded by talent. When we go to hire, we have been always saying that you go and hire from tier 1 colleges, look at the academic ranks, but we also experimented in between due to having some leaders who were quite open for experiment as well as for realized leaders. In an experiment where we went for tier 2 cities and tier 2 colleges to get freshers. And after a year, 6 months, year, 1.5 years, when we tracked their performance and tracked their retention also, the tier 2 institutions, tier 2 colleges, cities, we saw a greater level of engagement, continuity, performance on the work compared to the tier 1. In fact, the attrition was higher on the tier 1, right? When I went back through those experiences, one nice word that correlated with this, fragile perfects, right? When we go behind the talent, the ability to deal with the difficulties of the organization, come back and show up every day, go through that rigor, and then keep doing it again and again and again to learn. Somewhere, when we go purely by the talent and academic scores, we seem to have not been able to do it. So that way this book has been, an eye-opener when it said, blinded by talent. As an HR professional, for many years, I would say I was blinded by talent. Going, every time saying that we just go by, get the talent, right talent, everything will fall in place. Possibly that's not the case, and with various experiments that we have gone through, this book clearly brings it out, saying that it's just not about talent. Talent without the ability to deploy it, the talent without the skill is not of use, and there it adds a point where effort becomes a multiplier. So twice it becomes important. Knowledge with effort becomes skill. Skill with effort becomes achievement. So knowledge without the ability to use that, it's of no use. So that way this has been a very eye-opening book. And the other important word, again I was having it for this one, enthusiasm is common, right? Any time when we hear, possibly about, after this discussion, panel discussion, or after reading the book, it has happened to me also personally. The moment you read a book, you pick all those words and get enthused with that, saying that I'm going to do this from tomorrow. We actually start, but what becomes rare is the endurance, right? That's another important one that I picked up. Enthusiasm is common, endurance is rare, and this book talks mainly about that endurance and how you build that endurance, and how does that make a difference? And it is not just about talent, right? I'll stop here. A lot more it comes to my mind when you talk about talent, because that's what my profession is, but we'll keep it for the next question.
Thank you, Karthik. You know, one of the stories that was talked about here was about the Harvard University experiment on treadmill. And that is, the story talks about students who are made to kind of run on a treadmill. And, obviously every person has a limiting factor at some point in time. And so there are some people who give up quite easily. The moment they start feeling tired, they give up. There are some people who endure the pain for far longer time and continue the process and journey for a much longer time. So, like everything that they do in the West, they document all these. So 60 people took that test, and this is how the results are panned out. These are the people who kind of endured it for longest point in time. These are the people who couldn't endure it for a reasonable amount of, beyond a certain point in time. Now, between the West and the India, the difference is that data will be in some obscure storehouse somewhere. But in the West, 40 years later, they take the data back and they go hunt those individuals who were part of this exercise. And they chart out how they have done in their respective careers, right? And that's where the magic happens, that all those people who gave up quite easily, or who at the first sign of trouble or first sign of difficulty didn't continue the treadmill, were doing a certain level of work in society. They had reached a certain level. But all those people who had endured the pain far longer, had lived with the problem for a little bit more time, trying to kind of endure it as much as they could, they went and found that they were very, very successful in their respective careers. So on an average, grit is something that if you build in, even at a younger age, can help you in terms of how you see and traverse through life. Because at the end of the day, life isn't a straight line. It is in any profession, any life, any aspect. You are going to face challenges. And the grittier you are, the ability to persevere all odds and carrying this going on is what will see you through to success. So I thought that was a good example to mention here. But I'm holding the mic for too long. I'm going to talk about, the second portion, Kumar, of the book talks about growing grit inside out. It gives a kind of a framework to us in terms of saying, hey, how do I really, and we have a lot of youngsters here, how do I really grow grit? Is there a formula for success? If I did A, B, C, D, and I tick off A, B, C, D, I can be successful. Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, again, Angela's research is specific. I mean, I've read other things as well. I think I can correlate these things together. So grit coming from inside out and outside in. So the definition of inside out is self-driven, right? Self-driven is inside out. Outside in is you get to be taught by others, like mentors, boss, peers, friends. So that's called outside in. So the inside out, the methodologies, there are one specific methodology she talks about is called directed practice. So what is the difference between directed practice and normal practice? So she talks about if you have strengths and weakness, you rally on the strength, but you focus on your weakness. Supposing if you're in management, and your weakness is being on time to the meetings. Time management is your weakness. So let's say you have to focus on that as a weakness, and you have to have directed practice. A directed practice is nothing but to repeat certain practice on a scientific basis, on a longer term basis, with mentorship. So basically, you try to get a mentor to give you a feedback on a real-time basis or a close real-time basis, and you do a closed-loop mechanism to correct yourself. So that is called directed practice. So when you are trying to do that, you will improve your skill. And she defines achieving equals talent into, skill into effort, and skill equals talent into effort. So that's what your effort comes twice. So twice the effort is, unless you put the effort, you can't achieve, right? Just because you're talented, right? So one other book which I read about is about DNA. Are you born with talent? Are you born with talent? So half the people think that you are born with talent. To some extent, it's true. Why? Because when you're born, your neurons in your brain is already wired to some extent. That wiring is based upon your DNA structure. There are more than 600 genes which define that, and that defines your neuron interlocks, relationships. So when you're born, you're born with some traits. And that is, so are you gritty or you're weak from day one when you're born? Depends. So it depends upon your parents. So you have some inborn skill. But she says grit can be grown. So how grit can be grown is to rewire that brain by directed practice. So it's like, how many people know about neural networks? Neural networks rewires itself. So the same thing happens to the brain. So it rewires, learns from the experiences, and then it rewires, and then it improves. So that is called the learning grit. Say, for example, she always, in her book, most of her research is about athletes, soldiers, yeah. So, but I'm just wondering why she didn't do much research on people from corporate world like us, people from business world and being entrepreneurs. So these guys are more gritty, if you ask me, but she has not done much research on the business world or on the corporate world. So she has done a lot more research on the education system. She has done a lot of study on students. She has done her case studies is always on the spelling bee competition in US, and also the West Point cadet training of the soldiers. So she talks about, and then she talks about the football team case study where Seahawks being consistently winning NFL. So these are her case studies. So when she takes a case study, she studies them and understands what makes them successful, right? And whether it was inside out or outside in. So in her research, what comes out eventually is it's both, right? You have to have the inside out practice. You need to have the determination. You need to have the grit to improve yourself. You cannot quit. She always says you have to show up. One of the basics, she talks about many qualities of successful people, are very successful people, are highly successful people. And is it the talent which is the common denominator? Or the most talented people are very successful? Or very successful people are most talented? The answer is clearly no. Okay, so talent is different, success is different. So talent is not equals to success. That is her clear research. So what is success and how, and about the many qualities and variables of what she talks about, one quality is grit, right? One quality has got a higher correlation for highly successful people, okay, than talent. So that is one of her research, and she talks about directed practice as one way of getting the grit score higher by consistent training and mentorship from others as well. So that's how we do try to scale up your grit score, and try to achieve towards that. So another research is younger people like some of you here in 20s, people like us who are in 50s, or some of you are in 60s. Who's more grittier? So the grit comes out of age, right? So generally the people in 50s, 40s, 60s are more grittier than the people in 20. So what is that? So the key thing is the people who are in 50s, 60s have gone through many learnings or hardships. He's talking about one experiment. There are many experiments. Right? There's an experiment on rats. There's an experiment on monkeys. There's an experiment on dogs. And the experiments in the research says, you face one hardship, you become grittier. You face another hardship, you become more grittier. So, as you grow, you've gone through many hardships in life, you become grittier over a period. But it's too late, right? So now as he said, if you had learned this book when he was 20, you would have been different, right? But it's too late, right? So people in this room need to understand who are people who got the age advantage. If you learn to be grittier in 20s, that gives you a huge advantage. Then people in 60s, it's already too late. So that is how it is, Basically, it is talking about the timing of being grittier and the return on investment of being grittier at early age. Yeah. So these are all some of the research points he talks about inside out.
Super cool, Kumar. So, coming to Karthik, the 4-point framework for inside out grit formation is about finding your own interest or passion. And each of us has an innate passion. Let us say A.R. Rahman was a software engineer. What a lousy software engineer he would have made, right? He was able to find his passion for music, which is why we have some of the immortal hits of A.R. Rahman. Similarly, as Kumar mentioned, you have this concept of, you found your passion, but because you found your passion, does it make you a genius? No. You have to work 10,000 hours, equivalent to maybe 10 years as it's mentioned there. So, deliberate practice in the chosen area of improvement. And then, do you have a sense of purpose beyond yourself? Right? Is it always about yourself? Will I get my paycheck at the end? Will I make my money? Is that all? Or are you really kind of looking at a big picture and saying, can I get the first Grammy or Oscar for India? Right? Is that a big picture dream that you have? That is also part of the process of making you. These are all motivations or inspirations that push somebody to become more grittier. And last, of course, is the hope. Do you nurture hope that you will be a far more successful in whatever field that you have chosen to be? And so on and so forth. So this is the 4-point framework. I wanted to ask Karthik, in terms of your experience of this 4-point framework, could you enlighten how the journey has been for you or any other person that you know of in